Very nice to meet you. I'm going to turn this down now too. All right, got it. Okay, there we go. Hi, I'm Deborah. I am a consultant and I run a company called The Content Technologist. We're a consultancy and educational media company based in Minnesota and around the world. And typically, I was just saying, typically I don't work with a development audience or a tech audience. Typically I work more with publishers and content creators, educating them on how to use different tools and how to use different software to make their content better. So this is a bit of a switch for me. And I think it'll be interesting, but yeah, it's pretty cool. My background is in publishing. I started my career about 20 years ago in publishing in New York. I worked in book publishing, magazine, any kind of publishing, but have been doing pretty much exclusively digital content for the past 10 years. And yeah, we expand what the possibilities of online experiences can be by supporting content professionals in the theory, practice, business, and craft of publishing digital content. And what that means is we assist clients with content strategy, content design, and operations. And we make a lot of media. Because we really believe that the internet can be a good and fruitful place with lots of interesting places to go. And also just high quality digital content is something that we can aim for. So yeah, this is me. Again, I've been experimenting with AI and generative AI tools for a few years. Actually, how I got into consulting was I was working at a publishing company and I was asked to demo all these new cool AI tools. And I loved them all and was told I couldn't use any of them because they were too expensive because the publishing team doesn't get to use that kind of technology. So I went out on my own as a consultant so I could learn more about them and learn more about what's happened and how they work. And I worked with really large companies, really small companies. The AI thing has been more experimental, but I do work with individuals and companies on not necessarily AI strategy, but more their content strategy and how they can work with AI. So I am assuming, just going to get a pulse check for the room. I am assuming that everyone in this room has used generative AI in some form. Is ChatGPT? Has everyone here used ChatGPT? Okay, yeah, you're all nodding. Okay. Who has used AI for writing work-related materials? Who has edited others' AI-generated work? All right, that's good. That's actually more. I did a similar presentation a few months ago and we had one hand. So this is awesome. Editing is great. Who has, do you know, does general capacity in the room, as far as, do you know what materials the AI, the large language models like ChatGPT and others, Jasper, all these other tools that are out there, do you know what they're trained on? Are you aware of the internet? Yes, the internet, the whole of it. Yes. Yeah. So you got all your Reddit, you got all the massive text websites, lots of different forums, and also we'll talk about how some of them, how we've learned since they were released that maybe they were also trained on some copyrighted materials. So it's interesting, but I'm glad everyone here has an idea of how LLMs work and understand how to play around with it. And I am super into using AI generated content in my work as a content designer for emails, customer and client communications, something I need to get down and get out of my head and get off quickly. Quick notes to self, transcripts and revising transcripts, also bulleting that out. I love to use AI for what is called pair writing, which is when it's basically that you write something and then you ask the AI what it would do to change it, and you kind of work together on a back and forth of how to get to a final product. but I am always the originator of the pair writing, but it's a good tool when you don't have another person to bounce things off of. I also rewrite clunky prose. If I wrote a sentence and I am like, this is not super great, I go back and use AI to rewrite it, or at least tell me some other suggestions, spiff it up. I get questions answered quickly. This is kind of the easiest thing.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you check the answer?
We'll talk about that. Yeah. Summary and summarizing things, especially summarizing events and transcripts. This is my newest thing, is if I'm doing a transcript like this and I want to get a summary, it can handle all that information and summarize pretty well. And creating content from outlines, which we're going to talk a lot about. And then creating outlines to fill in with content. So on both sides, I use it a lot for either making an outline that has some important points that I want to cover, or if I have an outline and I don't want to fill it in, then giving that to the generative tool. Because there's certain things that we want to watch out for when using AI. This is one of my favorite examples. I asked ChatGPT, what are some AI related blogs that I can follow? And this is really great because the first two of these are actual blogs. They're very good blogs. The last two sound like they could be good blogs, but they're definitely made up. They're definitely not real. Yeah. Yeah, I wish we had AI ethics blog. I think there are plenty of blogs also that are like maybe have different titles but aren't called AI ethics, and we could. I work in SEO, so it's like, okay, we could tweak that a little bit. But yeah, the last two in this list are made up, and there is a definite. But at least I think we're aware that AI hallucinates things and it makes things up because it wants to finish the assignment or complete the sentence. This is something I read that I really liked the way it was put. Because they're designed to produce strings of words based on strings of words they have been trained on, but without overtly plagiarizing, they're quite good at lying, but terrible at surprising. They're designed to produce book reports, not books, which I like. It's very much that generative AI is designed to summarize, to be a foil for human communications, but not to supplement human or to replace human creativity, because really the actual creativity that an LLM is capable of is more or less kind of putting together two unlike things that haven't necessarily been together before, but not necessarily coming up with a whole brand new idea and then executing it end to end. So yeah, AI, some of the things that we're going to watch out for with using AI for generative content is that generative AI really just wants to complete the sentence, but then it also kind of wants the sentence to keep going. It's interesting how we as communicators, as a communicator, I train people to write short sentences, use bullets, use as little language as possible. Generative AI does not do that. But it just wants to get to the end of the sentence and add another clause and maybe add another clause. But it also just kind of, once it gets there, it's like, and we're done. So we definitely know that it's prone to hallucination. We also know that copyright laws have been around for a long time. They've been around since like, I think the 1600s in England, but in America, they're about like what we consider modern intellectual property laws, about 100 years old. And one of the things about working on the internet for so long has been that I realized that there are a lot of people who think that because something is already on the internet, that the creator, whoever put it on the internet, had permission to do so. That is not true. People have largely ignored intellectual property laws and just online communications. And even working at a digital agency about 10 years ago, it shocked me. Like I took media law in college, but like, it shocked me that people didn't know, like, no, you can't just pull an image from the internet and put it in your document and then give it to a client and say, reprint this. You actually have to have permissions and rights and everything to use that content. So some of the manufacturers of generative AI have ignored intellectual property laws, probably because they were using websites that had pirated copies of books. That's actually the biggest one in the publishing industry. So they just kind of ignored it and said, well, it's a large data set. It's being trained on everything, but it was actually trained on specific books that are copyrighted materials. So it's kind of an issue. So Sarah Silverman is suing AI and OpenAI and Meta. Getty Images is suing Midjourney. We can talk about Midjourney in a bit. Midjourney is so fun. It's really, really great. Don't ever publish anything commercially that you've made with Midjourney because it's probably a copyright mess. Because they just scan, there is the idea that, oh, just because it's online, we can scan it and use it. And it's like, no, you can't actually. So it's just something to consider. Other things, AI content is not all knowing. And this is a thing that I've even dealt with like been talking to friends. It's only trained on the internet. So it only knows as much as the internet and that illegal set of books that it's trained on. It only knows as much as publishing knows. It doesn't know things the way a human knows them, which I think everyone in this room knows. But it is important to remember that when you ask a person or a computer any question, that greeting it with a healthy degree of skepticism is always welcome, because it's not all knowing. It's a computer. It doesn't know everything. It knows some things very well, but it only knows as much as the internet knows. And there are plenty of things that, because of intellectual property laws, are not published on the internet, like lots of science and academic papers, and also lots and lots of books that are published every year. So even just as far as, what it knows, it only knows as much as what is in the crawl that generated that data set knows. So, and yeah, AI content keeps going. Contrary to business writing principles, AI generated content favors long circular sentences that go on forever. There is a lot of circular logic in AI generated content, and where it's, you can see, you can ask, I saw a piece that was clearly AI generated the other day, because it said something, it was like, and that's in fashion, and it's in fashion because it's fashionable. And it's like, okay, that doesn't tell me anything. It's in fashion because it's fashionable. That's circular logic. So AI wants to keep talking, it wants to keep chatting with you, and it doesn't necessarily answer in the most concise way possible. And especially if you've been trained in business comms, it's funny how much people are using AI for business comms, and it's like, this goes against everything that I learned in my writing classes in school. So it's interesting, but AI keeps on talking, and it can be a bit dull. The thing is about generative AI, it's based on what's on the internet, and it's like it's trained on forum posts and on marketing websites. And from a content and publishing perspective, most of what AI generates is, I think, average to below average as far as out the gate, no touching, no editing. It's just kind of, yeah, this isn't actually very interesting from a content perspective.
It seems like the content has gone down.
We're going to talk about that too. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, again, it's predicting, but it's not surprising. It's not adding that spark that makes you think, that makes you laugh. The dumb AI jokes are great. They're great. I love them. But it's also, when you actually think about the structure of the joke and the structure of the humor, and compared to what comedians actually do and comedic writing actually is, it's like, yeah, this is just kind of comparing two things, and it's a little weird and uncanny versus this actually has dramatic irony and all the, all the writing structures that trained writers know how to do. So, which is, yeah, it's a little dull. It's interesting, but dull. And also there's the old plagiarism. So especially in niche subjects where there's not much predictive text to choose from. If you're writing a blog for a company and you require deep subject matter expertise and you're the only one publishing content about this topic, AI is not gonna produce something that is wholly new or wholly different because it's probably only ever been trained on your content and maybe like one other if you're the only people publishing about it. So it's one of those things that, especially in niche subjects, I know that I've seen this happen where someone's been working on a, they've been working in an industry for a while and they've created a lot of content on the website. And so they're tired of creating that content. So they ask the AI, oh, hey, can you write about this? And like, there's a sentence in it. And it's like, I wrote that sentence. That was a sentence that I wrote because it was the AI only knows about the topic from the one website that the person wrote. And plagiarism, plagiarism is wrong. There is a difference between, people come to the same ideas in the same way versus outrightly plagiarizing. But it was very much like, yeah, the ideas, words, and structure of the sentence were all things that I came up with. So it's just something to be aware of when using AI content. And then this is kind of the new one, drift. Yes.
One question on plagiarism,
Yeah.
because there's other programs out there that use AI that actually test for plagiarism. Like
Yes.
Grammar Kids, for example.
Yep.
So is Chat, for instance, which is the most popular, do they have a plagiarism check point on the output, or are they just spitting it out through a traditional LLM?
So they don't have anything on the output. There are other, there are a lot of tools that are plagiarism checkers. And AI checkers too, like, has this been AI generated? To be honest, they don't work super well. I mean, I think they work as well as a person at telling whether it's been AI generated, because a lot of the times with people have also tweaked it and edited it. But yeah, there's not an output in that way. Maybe there should be. There's a lot of different things I would love to add on top of ChatGPT. The shorter sentences is actually number one, but there's a lot of different things I'd like to add on top of it to make it a little bit more useful. But what's happening, and this was really interesting, there was a Stanford study in Fortune a couple of weeks ago, is this thing that the machine learning scientists are calling drift, which I don't really know what. Like, I just know it's just, when driving Tokyo Drift, like when you lose control of the car and you're hydroplaning, I don't know. Drift, it's drifting from the original point. So what is happening? And they did this with ChatGPT with a number of models. Some researchers at Stanford were taking a look at how accuracy changed over time. And actually what happened, because machine learning models are always learning and growing, and they're designed to always learn and grow, prompts that produced really accurate results, especially in solving math and logic problems, after the model's been running for a while and learning, they were not producing as accurate responses months later. So same prompt, not even a different response, but a not as accurate response, or an incorrect response. And so they're calling that drift. And yeah, when we are tuning a large language model to improve its performance on certain tasks that can actually have a lot of unintended consequences, which might actually hurt this model's performance on other tasks, which, as probably many of you know, that's for me, I'm like, that's optimization, right? Like that's, you pick the thing. Computers don't have the capability necessarily of optimizing towards two goals at the same time. It wants to pick one, and that's the one that you're telling it, optimize towards this goal. Forget about this other thing here where you need the math to be accurate. As long as your chat's good, that's something to think about. Like as long as your chat's good, you don't have to worry about accuracy, but it's just that I think the thing I think about when I read the story about drift was just, well, yeah, that's what we're training it to do. We're training it to learn. But because it's not a person and doesn't always know what the correct answers are based on those outputs, it's learning, but it wants to give you a different answer every time to prove that it's learning versus to prove that it knows things. So I just thought that was really interesting. And also just from a content creation perspective, kind of not what we use computers for, in my world, it's a lot of templates. And yes, if we do these same things in this mostly the same way every time, we get similar results. This is a little scary. The drift is a little scary. So I don't know what to make of that. I just know that that's what they're finding, is that not everything, the answers are changing over time and not always for the best. So, and because these models are black boxes, it's also hard to figure out what's going on and why that's happening. So yeah, and it's just funny because it's like something like ChatGPT, which is getting tons and tons of inputs from tons and tons of people. It just, doesn't always know where to look when it's learning. So yeah, so all of these things are things to be concerned about. That said, I still love using AI generated content. And so I'm going to go through a couple of the skills to help you use AI generated content more effectively. And then I'll do a little demonstration of one of the tools that I use and one of the prompts that I use pretty often, even if it's just to get an idea of what a blog post could look like. And then it's like, okay, I'm seeing this, I'm going to write something new, but it's going to look like this, but different. So the number one thing is there is a tendency to think that because the AI language model generates language so quickly that you don't need to prepare anything and that it gives you an answer right away and it sounds really certain. But especially when you're thinking about quality, longevity, you should really think about, before you even ask, what do you want to create? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What's your vision for asking the AI what you're asking it for? And obviously this isn't for like an internal email, but if you're asking it to do creative or ideation, think about what you want it to generate. And obviously the prompt is part of that, but it's also just thinking about, well, how would you tell a human to do it? What do you want to see at the end? You're managing it. And make notes on those key points because you'll want to go back to them later. And I did this slide twice. All right. Thinking like an editor. So I'm a trained editor. Told you I worked in publishing for a while, and I kind of love AI because it's actually, I love AI because AI generated content because it means I get to edit more and I'm not always generating writing. So if I am able to, like, this is the thing, it's like, spend more time editing. I know that it's like, okay, you're generating the language really quickly and you want to get it out the door. But if you think about it like an editor, it's really thinking about the skill set, like is this, asking yourself, is this information even true that it generated? So you put something in, you get something out. Is the information even true? Can it be corroborated by multiple internet or ideally even offline sources that can tell you whether it's correct? Precision is a big one. especially when you're looking at, descriptive language and just kind of general precision of language. Is the AI using the best words to describe the situation? So are the words it's using, are they precise? Do they accurately describe what the intended outcome is? And it's kind of like when in high school, when you just shift F7 to look up a thesaurus, and then you look up a new word in the thesaurus and insert it into your paper, and then found out later that really wasn't the right word to use in this situation. My thing is, if it's not a word or a term that you would normally use and AI spit it out for you, maybe find a way to rewrite it in your own terms and what you would actually use. That's what as an editor, editing different writers over time, sometimes you'll change their language and be like, oh yeah, well, I rewrote it this way, and you'll send it back to the writer and they're like, well, I would never say that, so let's cut it from this. And that's not a word I would use. And that's a fair critique. If it's not a word that you would use, don't pretend that the computer is going to use it better than you. Just making sure that your precision is there. Appeal is a big one. Again, with that boredom part, is this content engaging for an end user, or will they tune out? And then readability. This is a big one that I've noticed about a lot of AI generated content. Again, with those, like the business communication, the bullet points, but it's just kind of in general, is it easy to read and understand and grasp after you've looked at this content for, you've been working on it and editing it, but would an audience who's not familiar with it read and understand it in a different way? And especially, I see this in imagery a lot, where people will, produce a prompt with an image generator, and then when you look at the image as a person, like, and as just a critical thinker, you don't really know what the image is. You just know that someone made it with AI, and there's like, I wish I had a better example of this visually, but it doesn't look like a person made it, and it doesn't really necessarily even make any sense in context. But because it's so easy to use generative AI tools and throw them at the top of a blog post, it's just because the colors are pretty and it kind of looks good doesn't mean it makes sense to another individual. So again, think like an editor, get another set of eyes. So again, proofreading, always important. I love this one. Audience awareness is an important factor when considering AI generated content. And it can have a big impact on how it is received by your audience. And it's like, okay, well, we said audience a couple of times here. So maybe we can find different words, different structures to say something a little bit differently. The old fact checking and corroborating sources, talked about that. Yeah, Wikipedia is still your friend. Wikipedia is actually, as far as like large data sets go, Wikipedia is as accurate as it can get. But also, one of the things to avoid those hallucinations, give the AI your own set of facts to rewrite. Instead of just saying, write about this. Say, I know these 5 things about my topic. Write me something about that. Restructure and reprompt. Every time you ask AI to tell you a story, just in general, it starts with like the exact, or ChatGPT anyway. It starts with the exact same starting sentence. It's like, once upon a time in the village of Pineville, in the place and there lived an X. And it's really great because it's like telling a story to or with a child. But most people don't, we're all pretty experienced in listening to stories. It's really not the most engaging story in the world. So consider restructuring and reprompting based on whether you would think it like this opening is even engaging. Is there a hook there? Is there something that will bring people in? And also consider the context of where whatever you're generating will be presented. Again, if it's just an internal email, that's fine. If it's a social media post, make sure that it makes sense in and of itself on its own. Being prepared for bias. ChatGPT definitely still has some of that. A lot of the language models have this where it's, especially in things like, in this particular example, can you tell me about a story about an executive? And it always picks a man's name for the executive. That bothers me so much. So it's just kind of, it's like, well, I know that it's trained on biased material, but we always have to be, I mean, everyone's good. This is, again, with humans are biased too. So it's just easier to yell at the computer when it's not giving you the necessarily the most sympathetic answer. So and again, addressing consistency and or repetition. This one, yeah, style and fashion is fashionable. This is a example is from the tool that I'm going to demonstrate called Writer. A style is Writer is I really like Writer as a generative tool because it is trained with the specific purpose of writing versus ChatGPT, which is kind of like, well, it can do everything. Writer really wants to write good copy. And so the vocabulary is more varied. The sentences can be more varied, but there's always a little bit of, yeah, fashion is a trend-driven industry that follows what is fashionable. Fashion is driven by the media, and like these are all great words, but it's, you want to make sure that if you're using the same word 2 times in the same sentence or the same paragraph, that if you're doing so, you're doing it for a reason. So it's just, again, addressing that consistency in that generative content. Also, I really recommend you work with content experts. And they might be really, really scared of how you're using AI because there's a lot of fear there. And this is where you can kind of make a bridge, extend your hand and say, no, I want you to help me make this content better. So you're happy and I'm happy with the content that our company is sending out. That is the ideal ways that you can work together, and maybe even like, it's like the pair writing, but with 3. You can have your content expert, your subject matter expert, and the AI tool. What should you avoid? These are just some big things in the past couple of weeks or couple of months. Individuals, still not a great idea to ask any chatbot about an individual, especially not a famous person or a non-famous person, because it will probably just hallucinate it. It's one of the things that I think academics and journalists worry more about than developers and computer scientists, but because everyone Googles themselves. And so they'll ask ChatGPT, what do you know about Deborah Carver? And then it'll tell you all kinds of lies. Actually, it says it doesn't know anything about me. But it's really, if you want to write someone's professional biography, go to their website or their LinkedIn profile. That's going to be the most up-to-date information. And don't ask it point blank for information on individuals, especially for people you don't know and you can't find that much information about, because it's probably going to say something that, if it were published in a newspaper, would be libel. Yes. So the other thing is, and this is actually, I love this, creators do the work. We may be using AI to improve productivity, and it definitely can, but good creative work comes from the process about taking the idea and making it real. and I know everyone knows this, it is just a thing, especially after the success of Barbie, which is a movie that was amazing and was mostly practical effects, had very little computer animation, which I loved. I also love Marvel movies, but I love when people are using practical effects because it means that, you're doing the work to make the magic happen instead of letting something else do it for you. And AI generated content can inform and support creators, but it is not the same as writing and producing creative work from scratch and surprising creative work from scratch, especially. So again, it's the AI can inform and it can build. It doesn't necessarily surprise you. And we've got organizations. As far as if any of you are in charge of AI at your organization, this is just kind of general. If it's a free AI tool, don't give it your intellectual property. In general, don't enter your intellectual property into a web form. That's just a general rule of thumb. But yeah, don't give public AI your trade secrets. So if you're like, I have this really exciting thing that I want to tell my whole company about, and I want to write a memo, and I give it to ChatGPT, and now ChatGPT has all your trade secrets. So don't do that. You can, if it's a model like Writer, some of those are better at protecting your own data so that only people in your organization would have any access to that whatsoever. But yeah, that's just a general, protect your intellectual property. Yes.
When you say protect IP, so you're an engineer or you're a developer and you're at your computer and you're working on a problem related to something you're working on that's proprietary for your company. Everything you put into AI is recorded, correct?
Ostensibly, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everything you do, every prompt you put in is recorded. So really, you can't use AI when you're dealing with anything proprietary with the company.
I agree with this assessment. I am less familiar with how intellectual property works with development. I'm just less, it's a different.
There's no way to,
yeah.
There's no way to go to that session you had and cancel it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct?
Yes, exactly.
There's
Yeah.
no way to do it. So
yeah.
You really can't use AI if you're dealing with something proprietary.
If it's a large, I would say if it's a tool that has limitations that is not sharing your data, like that you have your, like I would say Writer is the biggest example of that because it doesn't actually share your information with anyone outside your company. So if I know United Health uses them, so they can enter in whatever their information is, but that's also a writing specific thing, or writing is a writing specific tool. But when we, yeah.
If you're on chat.
Yeah.
And you're entering things related to something proprietary.
Yeah.
All of those prompts are recorded. And you can't take them back and you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's more akin to saying them out loud in this room, I would say, than like recording them down so that someone's going to take your trade secrets. But yeah, it is the kind of thing. Have discretion. Yeah.
I was just going to respond to that. There's a difference between like the publicly available, large language models like ChatGPT and Bing and Bard. And those, anything you put in there comes available for the rest of the public that has access to it. But there is also the ability to create, more private sandboxes in your own development environment.
Yeah.
So that's what companies are investing in doing. They're working with some of the cloud providers like Microsoft Azure. You can stand up your own environment, train your own model, your own kind of private chat GPT, if you will, where you would only give access to the certain people.
How do you do that?
Have access to.
How do you do that? Create your own.
Well, you would, there's several approaches. The do-it-yourself approach, if you have all the technical expertise, but for the easiest ways to do that is partner with some of the cloud providers that are out there, like Microsoft or Google or Amazon, that have environments, the cloud environments, that have a lot of the tools already there behind the scenes for building AI models. And then you still need your expertise and your data scientists to train that. So long story short, there is a way to do this. It's just the level of complexity well beyond what the average person has. You need a level of technical expertise that you have in-house or you're buying, to be able to create private models that allow you to, do things like train on your own data. If you want to create an AI chatbot, but you only want to give answers on your company's products, that can certainly be done, right? It's just, you have to create that model.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and sometimes I actually asked Writer one time about one of its products, and it came back with something about Grammarly, which is the completing product, that was fun. Yeah.
I think there's a feature in the settings of ChatGPT now that you can check that if you put something in the context from the prompt, it doesn't put that into its sort of training model, that it doesn't become part of the corpus of knowledge. It's turned out that you have to go to settings and then get that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I did not know that. Yeah.
With a phone.
I'm sorry.
With a phone.
Okay. Oh, okay. With the paid membership. Yeah. $20 a month. Is it 20 or okay? It's right now it's 20. Yeah.
One thing I think is also interesting to consider is that when whatever data you drop in is considered, this is my understanding, is considered in the context of the total data that it's trained on. So while, say, an employee at a company, desperate to meet a deadline, might put something proprietary into a public version of ChatGPT, and the company might justifiably get upset about that. The pool that it's going into is so vast.
Yes.
And the chat model is going to know, aha, I got something proprietary. I'm going to prioritize, spreading the secret to the world. It's considering it in the context of the internet. So
Yes.
it seems like that particular risk at the current point at which those public models are at is relatively low, but it seems like
That's true. And somebody else can have a program that's programmed to look for certain words and pull those out and pull the context out.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
Works both ways.
Yeah. And it is one of those. Also, you really shouldn't put proprietary data in Google in any way. Like nothing. It's some of the internet is not private. It's again, I've worked with search data for a long time. If people put all kinds of things in there, but technically it's not private. And then making sure that you have some style guides, grammar checkers. Definitely, I always turn, especially when I'm using AI generated content, I make sure that the grammar checker sentence length is turned on, or so that passive voice is eliminated. Sometimes it's okay, but you want to get as many out of there as possible. So monitoring output with style guides, standard grammar checkers. And you can also consider training your own LLM on brand style. If anyone reads The New Yorker, there was a great piece where a writer used the writer tool that I'm going to show. It trained it on his style. And he's like, yeah, and I tend to use all these cliches in my, these different type of cliches and constructions, and it spat them back to me. So I got, you get to look at your own crutches, your writing and creative crutches through the eyes of a computer, which is actually really fun. I kind of want the writer team to do that. So technically you could also train your LLM on brand style too. So yeah, I like Writer. I like these 3 tools also. Jasper. I do like ChatGPT. I think you should use the paid version if you're going to use it. That's generally my rule with, everything is you get what you pay for. I like Copy AI as well. And I wanted to go to really quick. I don't know how much time do we have? We're good. 17. Okay, cool. I'm going to go to, and everyone's going to see my tabs because I didn't close everything out before the end of the day. Okay, it wasn't this one, sorry. There's Writer. Okay. Oh, here we go. All right, so this is, and it's not even showing. I'm not screen sharing it anymore on that screen. All right, so I'm gonna do this here. So this is I was talking about creating an outline to either fill with content or creating content to put in, or creating an outline for the AI to fill with content, or for the AI to generate an outline for me to fill with content. I use Writer for that. I love this guy, the blog builder. So I am happy to generate a title unless someone here would like to generate a blog post title. All right, we're just gonna do.
Chickens, to clock or not to clock?
Well, like, let's do something. How do we raise backyard or raise backyard? Let's see, this is what happens when you type in front of other people. Chickens. How do we raise backyard chickens? And you can always do a similar title. You can also add your SEO keywords in your buy some eggs. So I'll go into so yeah, these are, I love this blog post builder because it will give you, it'll say, oh, here's all the points. And if you're like, this is what it's generally going to write about, and you're like, okay, I think these are the things I want. But you can harvesting eggs and meat from your, we're gonna get rid of and meat. So we're not, that's not that kind of chicken coop. And all right, and then we'll go to key points. Thanks. So, and then for each of these, it comes up with 5 different sentences. So again, you can regenerate them, you can edit them, you can add, I can't really read it right over here, but you can add them and move them around, look at what order they're in. You're really doing a lot of editing here. If you're using a tool like this to build something, you're doing, like I said, the work of the editor is to say, okay, this goes in this order, this makes the most sense. Oh, see, like, I like Writer because it will get into this kind of detail. This is also one I'm like, I don't know, is that a real thing or did it just make that? Okay.
And that's pretty.
Okay. There you go. All right. See, exactly. It's the hen that's breeding, but not the egg. And then after you've gone through and template. Thanks. And it thinks. Sometimes it shows up at the bottom. No. It takes a second. It's a detailed blog post.
What's doing that besides the blog builder? What else have you used Writer for?
I use it a lot. It also has a style guide, which is wonderful because it augments the AI. I use it for recaps. Is like, that's also the if I have a meeting with a client and I just want the whole meeting recapped, it's my new project manager that can recap a meeting for the most part. Again, I have to check to look to make sure it said all the important things, and I always do look at the transcript as well. But yeah, the recapper here is very good, but I've also done a lot of recapping with some other tools as well. Just played around with those.
And the recap is based on the transcript or on your own notes?
It's usually what happens is, and how I understand that they work is that the transcript is the first AI bit, the lovely transcription, and then it takes the transcript and summarizes it. So, and there's some tools that are doing it, I believe, like live-ish on, yeah, Otter can do it live-ish in a meeting, which is great. I love Otter. It's really wonderful. Yeah. And here is how do we raise backyard chicken? There we go. This is a long blog post, probably needs some editing, but everything that we had in the outline should be here. And so yeah, and then yeah, there's a couple other templates here. I also like some of the other tools like Jasper. It'll have tone selectors. There's not as many tone selectors here. You can just add that in the prompt, but it'll be like, write this with a humorous tone, or write this very seriously, or write this in an informative manner, and you can just check the box and you don't have to think about putting it into the prompt. So yeah, I've done most of these. These are the best too. The things I don't do with AI, I do not like generated blog post titles. I find they're almost always, and email titles, they're almost always the same as every other email title. And that's kind of what you don't want. Blog post, not so much, but email, you want it to be at least a little magical so people open it up. I don't use it for that, but I use it for a lot of other things. So yeah.
Writer only a paid?
Writer, I believe, is paid. A writer, I don't think they have the free, they used to have a free version when I started with them. Jasper is paid. Most of the tools are paid, although almost all of them will be happy to give you a demo and give you a free trial. So any other questions?
So you were saying, you can train it on style.
Yes. If you have a lot of copy that you were positive is in your own style, like if you have a bunch of brand copy, yes, you can. That's something I'm trying to get a client to do right now. Again, because of the proprietary, just the proprietary and IP considerations, it's just kind of like, I don't know, we should just get a writer first. They actually should get a writer first and then trade. Then after our copy is created and the new brand voice, then train it. So yeah, it is the kind of thing though, that if you have a lot of content and a lot of written brand content that you're sure is on brand, yeah, throw it into a model. You can, some of the models are open source, but yeah, really you're going to get the best results if you work with the software companies. So, any other, yes.
I have more just like a speculation type question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the Sarah Silverman lawsuit against AI.
Yeah.
And I think there's two different ways that could go, right?
Yeah.
One could go in a landmark case for content creators. Another, such like, or I guess like similar to like Google,
Yeah.
where people sued them for showing a lot of their content and search results in Google ultimately won in most places, or just refused to show content in places like Canada.
Yeah.
Until they gave in.
Yeah.
Like, which of those two ways do you think it goes, and do you feel like there might be a precedent here where some large company creates that through a court case where they showed it? That kind of content can be copyrighted.
I think I don't know where the Sarah Silverman suit is. Like, I don't know what state it's in. I think it's going to depend on the judge. I do also think that Google lost the case with publishers about putting Google Books online. So that's where I see the precedent happening is like going up against Sarah Silverman is probably, I would say she probably has some pretty good entertainment lawyers, and going up against the media establishment, like the 20th century media establishment has never hasn't gone well for Google. In those larger copyright cases where they're clearly displaying books or reprinting content, because it's significantly transformed, you could make a fair use case for it. And I don't know, I think the thing is, I don't know what she's using as her proof. Like, did it spit out a Sarah Silverman routine? Or did it alter it enough that it doesn't look anything like a Sarah Silverman routine? But I'm like, also it depends on the state, because if it's in California, there's all kind of torts there that are that could protect it versus just wherever else, depending on
Prove that what the source was, that it was actually her book versus somebody writing, an editorial or a critique of it, or somebody else publishing it without the copyright.
It would have to come out pretty similar to her content.
The extent and the nature when that played into part, like if somebody said, "Hey, come get your Sarah Silverman bootlegs over here."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
copy-paste that, like, or take.
I think it's when the prompts are like in the style of Sarah Silverman, and if they could prove that it was similar, but I don't know if it's like, I don't think it's smart enough to do that. I honestly, it's, so yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes, because there are parts of it I'm like, this is very old entertainment. This is very old versus new media. And so it kind of, it depends on your judge, it depends on the state, and it depends on the day, I guess. Like it could go either way, I think. I think there's just so few protections for individual creators too. So versus like if you're Viacom. So yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think just to respond to that, I've got a friend who's a lawyer in open source, and he wrote a different paper on exactly that topic, so if you're interested in that.
Oh, I would like that too. Yeah. It's one of those, I'm like, I'm glad she brought the lawsuit, because it's just kind of draws attention to the issue. Do I think she'll win? I don't know. Like copyright lawsuits, I never know. So I didn't actually think that Google would lose the publisher lawsuit, but they did. So yeah.
When you file a copyright lawsuit, don't you have to prove financial loss? And how would you do that if somebody publishes something?
Not financial loss. You do have to prove that it was, I forget, I'm not a lawyer. I don't, but I don't, you can say this was, you used my material and then trained it to make a Sarah Silverman clone or something like that. I think but that's the thing. If it output something that was very similar to her book or to one of her routines, that would definitely be kind of a home run for her. But I think for her, it's more of a, and for that case, it's more of a like, yeah, no, you can't just do this. And I'm angry about it because it's my work and I thought about it. So yeah.
Justin asked folks to drop questions in the chat.
Oh, yes. Oh, and I'm sorry. I told Justin that I would repeat everyone's questions and then I completely forgot to do that. I'm sorry, people online. So yeah, we were talking about whether Silverman has an actual case. Are there any other questions? Are there? Oh, that's because I can't see them. They're over here on the big screen. All right. Oh,
Were you looking for questions?
I was looking for our questions, but it looks like mostly.
Yeah, there's just sort of chitter chatter with
Okay.
regards to what's going on.
All right, cool.
I
Are there?
had a question for you, Deborah. I mean,
Yes.
I know you're speaking at other events, I think, as well, coming up. Maybe you wanted to share a little bit about some of the other things you're speaking on later this year.
Sure. I'm Content Technologist is doing a couple of live online event series. Oh yeah, Justin asked, where am I speaking at other events this year? My company, Content Technologist, is doing 2 sets of events this year. One is for what is just kind of like a casual salon, and that one's inexpensive to drop in, and it's just going to be kind of a Friday afternoon fun hang time. And those will be in the first Friday of the month, starting September 8th, which is not the first Friday of the month, but every first Friday thereafter. And I'm also doing some skills courses, and which are mostly designed for content folks. So if you want to up your content skills, come find me. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as where to find me, content-technologist.com. And sign up for the mailing list. Yes.
Would you recommend Jasper or writer for academic articles? I work for university. I'm doing some.
Ooh, I test them. I test them both, and like I would say writer probably just because it's better at writing. But Jasper kind of gets a little jaunty. He gets voicey. But I think you can also prompt that out. So but yeah, test them and see what you're interested in. Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, we were asking about
Good.
AI for academic articles. And I think just in general, you should test 2 or 3 different tools. There's so many out there right now. A lot of them just kind of use ChatGPT. But tools like Writer, tools like Jasper, they are doing things a little bit differently than OpenAI and ChatGPT. So yeah, thank you. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Awesome, Deborah. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, getting a lot of applause. I was just going to end off real quick. I don't know if you can, they can still hear me real quick.
Hey, Justin. Okay.
Yeah, just, before I sign off with the people online,
Thank you online.
Yeah, we'll be doing conversational AI with Python
How long is
on
it
September
before we
7th.
The
So
majority of people saying, expand on this topic, and we'll write the full blog, and then the person on the other end saying, this is too long, take this blog and compress it down to the summer.
Oh, yes. That happens. Yeah. The thing I like.
Need a smart app.
Yeah, I know. It's the thing I like about